This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, and faith-focused feature stories with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Fauci pleads the fifth. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. Former pandemic point man, Dr. Anthony Fauci, refused to answer questions today before a Senate panel about the virus that killed over 15 million people and shut down the world a half-decade ago.
Under the advice of my attorneys, I will invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to refrain from answering your questions. Thank you.
Kentucky Republican Rand Paul, chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee.
It's against the law to obstruct an investigation of Congress. There will be repercussions to your refusal to testify today.
Michigan Democrat Gary Peters.
Today's hearing, unfortunately, does real damage. It's tempting to turn one person into the scapegoat for a crisis that hundreds of officials across both the Trump and the Biden administration were responsible for handling.
ABC's Karen Waugh continues our coverage on Capitol Hill.
6 years after the pandemic gripped the globe, new insight into the U.S. government's response. A Senate committee today accusing the former head of the COVID response effort of misleading Americans about the source of the virus and lying to Congress, all which Fauci denies. He and his lawyers say the accusations are part of Republican Senator Rand Paul's personal vendetta against Fauci. Karen Waugh, Washington.
Infectious disease expert Dr. Houman Hamadi thinks Anthony Fauci's guilty of a COVID cover-up.
Basically, what he has done is shown the world that you cannot trust government public health officials, and that is a very dangerous precedent to set because public health depends on trust. That trust is earned over decades, over generations, and now we have to start from ground zero, and people have to rebuild that trust.
From mask mandates to school closures to social distancing, Hamadi says there's a lot about the pandemic that Fauci got wrong.
America is not a nanny state. Our founding fathers created this country. Why? To celebrate individual freedom. And these people decided they're going to take all of those things away from us in the name of protecting us from something they couldn't even really define very well. It's a shame what happened. This is a very dark chapter in American history.
Fauci is the former head of the National Institutes of Health. Newly released diary entries show he was enamored with his celebrity status at the height of the pandemic. The other big story today, the weather. Torrential rain leading to flash flooding in the northeast parts of the region, bracing for even more wet weather today. NBC's Emily Aketa is in hard-hit Muncie, New York, in Rockland County.
The force of the winds and rains at one point knocking out power to hundreds of thousands of people on the East Coast.
The water was waist deep in parts of Pennsylvania. A tornado tore apart a community south of Baltimore, and in New Jersey, a man was hospitalized after being struck by lightning. Overseas, Iran has tried to attack America again. Fox's Trey Yinks.
Overnight, Iran launched a surprise attack against U.S. forces in Jordan. At least 5 missiles were fired by Iran, breaking the lull in fighting over the past several days. CENTCOM released a statement saying all Iranian missiles were successfully intercepted. The United States has not yet responded to that attack, but overnight, U.S. and Saudi planes conducted a series of airstrikes against Iran-backed Shia militias in Iraq.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is denying rumors of a rift between himself and President Trump. The head of state telling Fox News,
would-be critics are trying to find cracks in our alliance, and what they find is a wall of granite. We have a common commitment.
The Prime Minister met with the President yesterday at the White House. Wildfires continue to ravage Spain and France, where hundreds of thousands have been evacuated from their homes. ABC's Marcus Moore.
And this is happening in the well-known Bordeaux wine region, an area many Americans visit this time of year. But right now, it is the scene of a catastrophe that the president says is completely unprecedented. He said they haven't faced something like this since World War II. And the concern now is that as the temperatures rise, skies, these fires will only get harder to stop.
The death tolls rising from a powerful earthquake that shook southern Japan. The trembler buckled roads, knocked out power, and caused the second floor of a shopping mall to collapse. Several are still missing there. The late Senator Lindsey Graham will be laid to rest today following a memorial service in his native South Carolina. Yesterday, President Trump eulogized his friend at the National Cathedral in Washington.
There can be no doubt that he lived absolutely to the fullest. He died doing the work he was born to do. He went out at the peak of his career, the top of his game as a legend. There was truly nobody like Lindsey Graham.
Senator Graham died suddenly on Saturday, July 11th, just a couple days after his 71st birthday, from a tear in the main artery of his heart. Still to come on the Noon Report for a Wednesday, Bills training camp, geese galore, and Senator calls out socialism.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. The system of low pressure that's brought the recent rain will be slowly departing, paving the way for some nicer weather to close the work week and to start the weekend. I'll have forecast details up in 10.
All right, Kevin, see you in about 10 minutes. Thank you. Let's check the stories making news where you live, all across New York and Pennsylvania. New York's Medical Aid in Dying Act takes effect 1 week from today. It allows terminally ill adults who've been given less than 6 months to live permission to kill themselves with the help of a doctor. Jeff Sugarman with Death with Dignity tells Spectrum News there are safeguards in place to ensure there is no coercion here.
I would say 95% of New York's law is similar to the other states. I think the biggest change in there is that the patient actually, under the New York law, has to record their request to use the medication, and that record, either audio or video, has to be a part of their medical record.
Next week, New York will join a dozen other states in permitting physician-assisted suicide. Pro-lifers argue the law mandates that faith-based healthcare providers offer suicide counseling in violation of their religious beliefs. Police say a new threat against Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro involved gang activity in the Camp Hill prison. That's in central PA. An inmate there allegedly wrote letters threatening harm against the governor and his wife. Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens is the acting commissioner of the Pennsylvania State Police.
His threats involve using contacts outside of the prison. He's been specific, for example, about using Crips gang members or other contacts that he has outside of prison to try and affect the violence.
Last year, the governor and his family survived an arson attack at their Harrisburg home. It was firebombed while they were sleeping inside the home. Still more questions than answers after the discovery of radioactive hotspots in Niagara County, New York. Earlier this week, the DEC and the EPA sent teams of inspectors to look at nearly 400 properties in and around Niagara Falls.
We don't know if there's something there or if it's naturally occurring or it's related to a man-made infrastructure. So we don't want to impact anybody's property values negatively or give somebody negative stigmatism about their property.
So people won't panic?
Well, we're trying to minimize it. We're going to release the data. That's going to happen. We want to be able to explain it, though, properly.
EPA geologist Peter Lysenchenko speaking there to WGRZ in Buffalo. The source of the radioactive material is likely filler that was used decades ago beneath roads, driveways, parking lots, and homes. Some of that material could be connected to the waste that was generated from the Manhattan Project, the World War II-era program that developed the first atomic bomb. More than 200 Canadian geese have been euthanized at Eldridge Park in Elmira, New York.
It was something we had to do, and that's something that we wanted to do, trust me. I know a lot of people get upset about it. I wasn't happy about it, but there was no other way to do it. You can't put them in a different area of the state because they'll migrate right back.
That's the mayor of Elmira, Dan Mandel, telling 18 News that fecal matter from the birds was contaminating the park and endangering public safety.
It just had to be done. It was becoming a real health hazard. And not only that, but their presence over there was eroding a dike that prevented flooding. over to the park.
Mayor Mandel says the bird culling effort was carried out by the USDA. Meat from the Canadian geese was donated to a local food bank. A new survey shows 1 in 6 children in New York suffer from food insecurity. That means they don't know where their next meal will come from.
The numbers are staggering. We have more people in pantry lines than ever before, yet we have less product from USDA. Now we have SNAP cuts that are taking effect that are going to be tens of thousands of people who are not going to have benefits. Where are those people going to go? They're going to go to food pantries, adding to the troubles.
Regional Food Bank CEO Tom Nardacci talking to Spectrum News.
We're mailing meals right now in the summer to kids, and trying to work with other community agencies, Boys and Girls Clubs and YMCAs, places where kids are, to get food to kids in need. Because we can't have kids that don't know, if they're going to have breakfast, they're going to have lunch, or they're going to have dinner.
The new Feeding America survey shows 48 million Americans are unable to meet their food needs on a daily basis, and that includes 14 million children. Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman is concerned about the rise of Democratic socialism within the Democratic Party.
Do you see what these freaks are running on? Abolish the Senate, abolish the presidency, abolish the border, abolish prison. They've never been Democrats. They're more like communists.
Fetterman says the Democratic Socialists of America threaten the Democrats' ability to take back control of Congress next year.
Without a doubt, they're just anti-American people that are the useful idiots for the Republicans. Maybe reconsider, we really want to win. Stop picking hot messes like that.
A recent Gallup poll shows more than 6 in 10 Democrats have a favorable view of socialism. Pennsylvania high schools can now get grant money to help transition to later start times. A provision in the state budget makes funding available for districts that want to adjust classes to better align with the natural sleep patterns of teenagers. A new state law recommends that high schools avoid start times any earlier than 8:30 in the morning. New York State has released the rules for the Safe for Kids Act, which takes effect early next year. Starting in January, social media platforms must turn off algorithm-driven feeds for users under 18. This is meant to cut down on mindless scrolling. New York Attorney General Tish James.
Extensive research has connected these algorithms to depression, to anxiety, to eating disorder, to disrupted sleep, and also to other serious harms, such as how one defines beauty in our nation. Our children should not be treated as sources of profit for the largest technology companies in the world.
The Safe for Kids Act also bans social media notifications for minors from midnight to 6 a.m. Big Tech also forced to verify users' ages and limit how much personal data they collect. Broome County, New York Sheriff Fred Akshar says deputies will start seizing electric bicycles if people don't start following the rules for e-bikes. The sheriff cites a rise in lawlessness among juveniles, and it's putting the public in danger.
My fear here is that if we don't have a conversation collectively as a community, the next conversation we have around this issue will be because some juvenile was killed because they were acting recklessly on public roadways throughout Broome County.
E-bike accidents have caused the deaths of over 100 Americans. Injuries from e-bikes have spiked by more than 430% in just the past 4 years. One of Rochester, New York's favorite sporting traditions kicked off this morning. The Buffalo Bills training camp marked its 25th year today at St. John Fisher University. The Bills have 7 practices that'll be open to the public between today and next Friday. After that, the team moves into their brand new $2 billion stadium in Orchard Park. We've got more sports next. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Sometimes even the best ones have off days. Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, we begin in our nation's capital as the Nats were taking on the Toronto Blue Jays and facing former Cy Young Award winner Shane Bieber. Bieber had pitched in 149 previous appearances in his career, and the most batters he had ever walked in a game was 5. Well, last night, Bieber walked 6 of the 9 batters he faced in the first inning. 3 of those walks came with the bases loaded. and then he got yanked after just 2/3 of an inning. Bieber becomes just the fourth pitcher in the divisional era to walk 6 batters in the first inning. He gave up 4 runs, and the Jays fell to the Nats 8-6. Garrett Cole spun 6 shutout innings, and the Yankees held on for a 3-2 victory over the White Sox. The Mets-Braves game was rained out. In Pittsburgh, James McCann of the D-backs singled in the winning run in the 12th inning, and that ruined a nice comeback by the Pirates, 8-7 the final. Pittsburgh got back-to-back home runs from Brandon Lowe and Brian Reynolds in the 9th inning to tie the game at 6. The Bucks also scored 3 runs in the 8th to pull within 6-3, but it was not to be. Sandy Alcantara pitched 7 shutout innings and allowed only 4 hits. The Marlins blanked the Phillies 1-0. Hey, when a team scores a run in every inning, if you're playing against them, chances are you're going to lose that game. Well, Detroit did the scoring. The Orioles did the losing by a whopping 14-0. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy Man, thank you very much. And still to come on the Noon Report. For Wednesday, Fauci pleads the 5th. End-of-life conversations and more menacing moves in the Middle East.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Back in April, a Psychology Today article noted how some people today, especially younger people, are finding their identity in their psychological struggle. For those who do, the point is not to overcome these struggles or to achieve personal growth. Rather, it's belonging by having a disorder. As the writer put it, quote, "We're living in an age where psychological explanations are prioritized above all others. Indeed, therapy speak has permeated everyday life. It's taken over conversations and relationships, leading people to claim boundary violations, accuse others of gaslighting, or see narcissists everywhere they go," end quote. It's true, between the rise of a hypertherapeutic culture and the whole critical theory mood that dominates today, a quick way to achieve social status is to have a kind of condition, preferably one that can't be challenged. There are, of course, real pressing psychological issues that face many, especially in the rising generation. Such people deserve to be taken seriously. But, as Abigail Shrier has rightly observed in her recent book, Bad Therapy, the mental health industry incentivizes mental health struggles. It's normalized the need to therapize even the most basic task of childhood, like making friends or cleaning your room. The result here is not better health, it's greater dependency. In fact, the whole cultural drift to valorize victimhood and to medicate almost every behavior is not providing this generation with the thing they need most, hope. In fact, it's the opposite. Despite greater mental health awareness and increased access to care than at any other time in all of human history, our rates of suicide and psychological distress are up, while rates of healing are down. But of course, we ought not be surprised when young people believe what they're told, that they're victims, that the world has no ultimate meaning, so they have to make it out of something in order to be their true, authentic selves. Essentially, we've placed the weight of making the world on their shoulders, and then are surprised when they stumble under the weight of the task. They're told, live your truth, be yourself, follow your heart, after learning in school that the entire cosmos is just one big accident, and then from social media that they could never stack up to the experiences of others. From their favorite Disney movie, they learn the hero's a villain, and the villain is just misunderstood. And so here they are, without any fixed reference points for knowing who they are, or why they exist, or how they should live. In that context, the therapist that's assuring them that they're the victim here, that's all pretty compelling indeed. Nearly a century ago, the Austrian psychiatrist Viktor Frankl wrote that the key factor in human survival, even more than just basic physical and mental health, is hope. And hope is at the core of the whole Christian message. Though the biblical view of sin rejects entertaining optimism about the human condition or unrealistic wishful thinking about the future, it does present the Creator putting himself at the center of this fallen world in order to renew and reconcile it and us. So Christ is making all things new, and that includes those who are lost and hurting. If Frankl was indeed correct, if there can be no healing without hope, then God's people are the ones uniquely positioned today to offer a way forward. For those who don't know who they are, or why they are, or how to live, there is indeed hope. In fact, we know hope by name. It's Jesus the Christ. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
Thank you, John. Outside, we head next, weather where you live with meteorologist Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life forecast for this afternoon. Mixed conditions across areas near Lake Erie. Just a stray shower with some sun mixed in with the clouds. Farther east, the clouds will be thicker, showers more numerous, and there'll even still be some localized flooding. High temperatures cool in eastern areas, 60s, low to mid 70s close to Lake Erie. A couple more showers scattered tonight and tomorrow, but skies break. Low temps tonight, 50s and low 60s, and the 70s tomorrow. And then a fair amount of sunshine on Friday with high temperatures close to 80.
All right, thank you, Kevin. This is the Noon Report. I'm your host, Bob Price. Lots to get to Wednesday, the 29th of July. Pandemic point man, Dr. Anthony Fauci, invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination today in testimony before the Senate Homeland Security Committee.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
He refused to answer any questions about his response to COVID-19, the virus that killed over 15 million people and shut down the world 6 years ago. Committee Chair Rand Paul of Kentucky.
No scientist is above scrutiny, no government official is beyond accountability, and no public servant has the right to treat the suffering of millions of Americans as a footnote to his preferred version of history.
Michigan Democrat Gary Peters.
Today's hearing looks backwards, revisiting questions this committee has already examined. But rather than building on that work to strengthen our preparedness against future disasters, we are instead relitigating the past.
Correspondent Jay O'Brien continues our coverage on Capitol Hill.
Fauci, 85 years old, once the nation's top infectious disease expert who retired in 2022, has long been a target of Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, the chair of the powerful Senate Homeland Security Committee, who's accused Fauci of everything from mishandling the COVID response to misleading the public about COVID's origins to even lying to Congress, all of which Fauci strenuously denies.
Fauci has a preemptive pardon from former President Joe Biden over concerns about possible political prosecution. Former DOJ Chief of Staff Chad Meisel thinks the pandemic point man orchestrated a COVID cover-up.
He lied to the American people. It's because he caught the publicity bug, a disease far more dangerous than the one he locked down the country for. People were watching their loved ones die and they couldn't hold their hand. People were seeing their children suffer because they weren't in school. People were going bankrupt because their businesses were closed. Remember, they're the ones who come up with the motto, trust the science, trust the science. We now know that they lied about the science.
Infectious disease expert Dr. Houman Hamadi says Fauci's refusal to allow debate about best practices during the pandemic caused a lot of us to doubt public health policy.
At least allow people to come in and debate and discuss. That's how science and medicine are done. He shut that down, and it caused grave harm, not just to the kids and parents, but to trust in public health.
Today's testimony comes after the release of more than 1,000 pages of Dr. Fauci's pandemic-era journal, which includes one diary entry that seems to contradict his statements on the origins of COVID-19. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia launched joint airstrikes on Iranian-backed militias in Iraq overnight. It comes as Iran conducted a surprise ballistic missile attack on U.S. forces in Jordan. All of those missiles were successfully intercepted. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez.
The possibility of a major escalation in the war ramped up again overnight. The U.S. Embassy in Baghdad now reminding Americans of the do not travel advisory for Iraq due to the potential for missiles and drones throughout the region. The war the president had predicted would last 4 to 6 weeks is now entering its 6th month.
300,000 people under evacuation orders today in southern Japan after that powerful earthquake there yesterday. Tens of thousands without electricity. Homes are pancaked. Rescuers are picking through the rubble in search of survivors amid dozens of aftershocks. Japan's prime minister is worried about possible landslides. The late Senator Lindsey Graham will be laid to rest today in his native South Carolina. President Trump eulogized his friend in a memorial service yesterday at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C.
For more than 30 years, nothing of consequence happened in this Capitol without Lindsey Graham knowing about it. Nothing of significance happened anywhere in the world without Lindsey Graham having a view on it. And no bill became law in the most exceptional republic in human history without Lindsey Graham having a say in it.
Graham died suddenly nearly 2 weeks ago, just a couple days after his 71st birthday, from a tear in the main artery of his heart. If you're an older American, listen up. Medicare Part D, which helps you pay for prescription drugs, is about to get more expensive.
Dr. Mehmet Oz heads Medicare and Medicaid services for President Trump and said in a social media post yesterday that federal subsidies to the Medicare Part D plan are going away at the end of the year because, he says, the insurers no longer need them. He said most Medicare recipients will see drug premiums rise by less than $10 a month next year, and that some will see their rates actually drop.
ABC's Jim Ryan in Washington. You're tuned in to the Noon Report, a midweek edition on Family Life.
It's one of those topics no one wants to talk about. Welcome back to another edition of Real Answers, a regular Wednesday feature during the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues that matter to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Welcome back, Chris.
Hey, Mark.
Well, not a fun one here, but a necessary one. Today we're tackling the thorny issue of end-of-life decisions, as well as what you might call after end-of-life decisions.
These are topics that, like you said, nobody really wants to talk about them, and the reality is, I don't think we need to be as afraid to discuss these issues and to tie up some of these loose ends, if you want to call them that, because quite honestly, it doesn't actually take that long, but it can make a gigantic difference when we have a loved one that's faced with end-of-life issues.
Well, in a way, that topic's been talked about a lot lately because of New York's upcoming legalization of physician-assisted suicide.
It really has, and it's really good that we distinguish between assisted suicide and just end-of-life decisions, because it's definitely not the same thing. Especially when we get into our discussion today about healthcare proxies and healthcare advanced directives, really drastically different things that you really need to be aware of the differences, and then also what to do about making sure that you have some of these documents on hand.
Yeah, I know just from experience, having gone through the passing of both my parents, that the time to make those sorts of tough decisions is sooner, not later. You know, it's a cliche, but on any given day, you just never know what's going to happen.
You don't. And the reality is having these documents in place is so important at relieving the pressure on your loved ones following your own passing. Because really what you're doing is you're giving directions about what you'd like to have happen once you're incapacitated to the point where you can't make your own healthcare decisions anymore. And basically what you're deciding is, do you want to be kept alive on machines or with feeding tubes, that type of thing? Or have you decided that once they've done everything they can do, and that's the only way they can extend your life, are you making the decision at that point that there's nothing else they can do and you just want to go peacefully and naturally? That's really what this is about. It's not the same thing as assisted suicide, okay? Because assisted suicide is you deciding, I don't want to live anymore, and it could be irrespective of any terminal condition. Remember the case of Terri Schiavo several years ago. This was a big case that brought national attention to these issues because there was a fight in her family about whether she should be kept alive on machines or not. She didn't have any kind of an advance directive in place. You know, half the family wanted to keep her alive, the other half didn't. So making these decisions now really relieves the pressure and stress on your family members because they'll know exactly what you wanted.
They're both legal documents, but they're not quite the same. What's the difference, advance directive and a healthcare proxy?
Different states might define them a little bit different from one another, and I would just encourage you to get onto your state's websites and find out just what each of those documents covers. If you have a designated power of attorney, for example, a healthcare power of attorney, then they need to be aware of all of these documents, and it really helps to prevent fights within families that we saw very clearly in that Terri Schiavo case several years ago.
You're listening to Real Answers. I'm Mark Webster, along with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson, talking about end-of-life decisions. And let's talk a little bit about after end-of-life decisions. I mean, the things that you really don't want to talk about, like what happens to the body, headstone. Who wants to talk about that? But you need to.
You know, and I probably view this a little bit differently than a lot of folks. And when I have clients that come into my office grieving the loss of a loved one or preparing for the loss of a loved one, I have them consider it this way. And a lot of times, you know, normal practice is you decide what you want to have done with your body, like cremation. or being buried in a cemetery somewhere. Quite honestly, for the believer, when you pass away, you're going to be in a place of no pain, sorrow, no grieving, no sadness, no sickness. You're not going to be all that worried about what people are doing down here with your body.
You went with the cheap coffin? Come on.
Exactly. You just made my point, Mark. Thank you. You're not going to be thinking about those things. Consider it this way. As the family mourns the loss of a loved one, I personally think it's not a bad idea to allow them to decide, really, how do they want to memorialize?
It's really more for them.
It's exactly my point. That it's for them. Maybe give them that freedom instead of being very rigid about, oh, you have to do this and you have to do this and this. Because the reality is, if you're a believer, you're going to be in a place that you don't even need to worry about that.
And as a believer, you shouldn't be afraid to dive into this stuff.
Exactly.
Honestly, pray about it and think of others and what peace of mind you're going to give to them.
Sure.
I think that's probably the takeaway here.
Yeah, and I think ultimately having it be kind of a joint decision where you involve your family, giving them the freedom to decide how they'd like to remember you. It could be planting trees. It could be setting up park benches with a memorial placard on there saying that this was donated in memory of. Allowing the family members to make some of those decisions helps them move beyond the grief. That moving beyond the grief does not mean moving beyond the memories. That just means it's giving you the freedom to re-engage life and to appropriately, in a healthy manner, remember the person that was lost, instead of carrying all that heavy grief around. That's when it gets to be problematic. So considering these things is not always fun, but at the same time, being prepared is well worth the time and effort.
Amen to that. You've been listening to Real Answers, a Wednesday feature of the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues important to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Thanks again, Chris.
Always a pleasure, Mark.
Our good discussion today, guys. Thank you very much. You can listen to all of our Real Answers podcasts, by the way, online anytime. Just go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or check out our website, familylife.org. And finally at noon for Wednesday, a 16-year-old lifeguard is getting an invite to the White House after saving a young child's life at a beach in Santa Cruz, California. Wyatt Warnoth is with the American Lifeguard Association.
I think it's a good thing he's going in to meet the president. I hope he stays in the lifeguard world. And, this brings attention to the fact that lifeguards are first responders. That's something that I think we overlook sometimes. And even with 16-year-olds, this is an example of the courage, commitment it takes to be a lifeguard.
The intense rescue of that 10-year-old boy over the weekend has captured the nation's attention. Check out the video for yourself. Absolutely incredible. That teenage lifeguard battled powerful waves and rip currents in bringing that boy safely to shore. And that's our world, the world we live in. Wednesday, the 29th of July. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.